On July 23, 1983, at 8:30 a perfect prairie summer evening was underway along the shores of Lake Winnipeg. The day's events at the race car strip alongside the Gimli Airport were winding down. One by one groups of people spotted a very large, very silent aircraft coming along the water. Too silent. Noticeably dropping too quickly, it did not take long to realize something was wrong, really wrong. Still, it did not make sense, so, bewildered, they just watched the passenger plane descend. There the story begins, the story that was one of the deadliest events in aviation history. On July 23, 1983, Air Canada Flight 143 took off from Montreal, Quebec, and headed towards Edmonton, Alberta by way of Ottawa. On board this multi-leg Canadian domestic flight were 61 passengers and 8 crew. Just after 2000, while the aircraft was cruising at 41,000 feet over Red Lake, Ontario, the crew received a warning of low fuel pressure in the left fuel pump. The pilots assumed the fuel pump had failed, and switched off the alarm. At the time, the flight management computer said there should be plenty of fuel. However, within moments, the right fuel pump alarm also sounded. The crew then decided to divert the aircraft to Winnipeg, 120 miles away. As they commenced the descent, the left engine failed within minutes. No sooner had plans for a one-engine landing been made than a loud bang could be heard. The cockpit alarm began blaring, all engines out, and the jet lost power. As if flying with no engines was not bad enough, the 767 was one of the first jets with an electronic instrument system powered by its engines. This meant that when the engines stopped working, all the instruments went dark. The captain was Bob Pearson, 48 years old. With him in the cockpit was First Officer Maurice Quintal, aged 36. By a stroke of luck, Captain Pearson was also an established glider pilot, and First Officer Quintal had trained at Gimli while serving in the Army. Quintal proposed landing at the former RCAF station Gimli, a closed Air Force base where he had once served as a pilot for the Royal Canadian Air Force. Unbeknownst to Quintal or to the air traffic controller, a part of the facility had been converted to a racetrack complex, now known as Gimli Motorsports Park. As the plane approached the runway, the pilots realized it was coming in too high and fast, increasing the likelihood that the 767 would run off the runway. With both of its engines dead, the plane made hardly any noise during its approach. This gave people on the ground no warning of the impromptu landing and little time to flee. As the gliding plane closed in on the decommissioned runway, the pilots noticed two boys were riding bicycles within 1,000 feet, 300 meters, of the projected point of impact. Captain Pearson later said that the boys were so close that he could see the looks of sheer terror on their faces as they realized that a large aircraft was bearing down on them. No serious injuries occurred among the 61 passengers or the people on the ground. As the aircraft's nose had collapsed onto the ground, its tail was elevated, so some minor injuries happened when passengers exited the aircraft. Plane ran out of fuel, causing this accident. Investigation found at the time of the incident, Canada's aviation sector was in the process of converting from imperial to metric units. As part of this process, the new 767s being acquired by Air Canada were the first to be calibrated for metric units. It was the first aircraft in the Air Canada fleet to use kilograms on the fuel gauges, and the measurements needed to be entered in kilogram per liter. Instead, crew measured fuel in pound per liter. Due to miscalculation between kilogram and pound leads the accident to take place. But hats off to the pilot and co-pilot who landed the plane safely. Thank you everyone for watching.